Hi, I'm Kaku from Kaku's Kitchen, and today I'll be sharing with you one of my favorite recipes from my childhood, and it's yam and plantain porridge or pottage. I don't know, different people say it different ways, but I tend to say porridge. So this is a very easy, very basic, beginner-friendly recipe, beginner-friendly version of this recipe. So if you want to learn how to make yam and plantain pottage, porridge, then keep watching and I'll catch you at the end of the video. You'll need one small yam cut up into 2-inch cubes, 2 small plantains sliced into 2-inch medallions, about 2 cups of chopped spinach, half a small red onion finely diced, a 1/4 cup of palm oil, 3 tablespoons of ground crayfish, 3 habaneros finely chopped, a tablespoon of salt, and 2 bouillon cubes. So you start off in a medium pot, and you add in enough water to cover up all of the yams completely. In this case, I used about 2.25 cups of water. Bring that to a boil and then add in the peppers once the yam has come to a boil. And then you cover it up and let that cook for about 5-10 minutes. And then you add in the plantains. Next, I add in the crayfish. And then I also add in the chopped onions at the same time, and right after that I also add in the salt, and then I kind of stir all of that in, just kind of get all of the spices mixed in, and cover it up and let this boil for another 5-ish minutes, another 5 minutes I'd say. And when that has boiled for another 5 minutes, then I add in the bouillon cubes. At this time I've crushed them because you don't want it to be solid in there and just show up in some random part of your food. And then after a short while, I add in the palm oil. Now it's important to cover up the palm oil and let it cook for at least 5 minutes, so it takes away the raw taste of the palm oil. And by the time you come back to it, you can see that the food has started turning into some kind of paste because the plantains have started melting, for lack of a better word. They've gotten so soft, they're starting to melt and form a bit of a paste in there. So I just mix it in, make sure everything is in there well and good, and then do a taste check to see if it's salty enough, if it needs any other spices. Then I add in the spinach and then just stir all of that in. And once you put the spinach in, it's important not to cover up the pot of food. Just let it simmer on really low heat. At this point I lowered the heat and just let it simmer for another 3, 4, maybe 5 minutes, and pretty much the recipe is done. It's a very simple, very easy recipe, but it's super yummy, and for most Nigerian people this is a classic. Okay, so there you have it. This is a very simple, very beginner-friendly version of this recipe, and it's really stripped down. In other cases, you can very easily add in like some fish in there, or like smoked turkey, or other different kinds of proteins in there, just to make it a bit more yummy, a bit more, inviting. Because it has plantains in it, I don't really feel the need to add in a whole bunch of other things like the fish I mentioned, or like the smoked turkey, or whatever else it is in there, because the plantains just make it really sweet, and I like that flavor in there, just the basic sweet plantain flavor in the recipe. Okay, a couple other things. The pepper, I know it looks like I used a lot of pepper because I mentioned that I used 3 habanero peppers, but you need to realize that if you're cooking with palm oil, it really mellows out the heat from the habanero peppers, or whatever peppers you use to cook. So if you're cooking with palm oil, it's usually a good thing to add a little bit more pepper than you would normally, to give you a little bit more heat. And then when you add in the palm oil, it's going to kind of mellow out the heat a little and bring it down to the heat level that you enjoy or you can tolerate in the meal. I like spicy food. I like really hot food. Oh, and another thing with the peppers is that I added it in really early in the recipe. So as soon as the yams came to a boil, I added in the peppers. So this way, the heat from the peppers is kind of like, it's not raw and unbearable. It's a bit more cooked and more evened out if that makes some sense. And so yeah, so those are the two things about the peppers. One other also, I'm looking down because I have notes in here, but I mentioned that I used a little under 2 cups. I actually ended up using only about half of that, so the entire recipe called for just a little less than a cup of chopped spinach. One thing finally though, I know this may or may not be, yams and plantains may or may not be new to you. So if you want to learn how, if you want to see how I prepped my yams and plantains before putting them into the recipe, into putting them to use, then I'm going to put a short clip after this showing how I prep the yam and the plantains and cut them up into what goes into being cooked. Okay, well, I will catch you next week with a different recipe. I'm thinking something that my husband really, really likes. So if you want to know what that is, then come back here again next week Sunday and you'll see what it is. Until then, catch you later and enjoy cooking. I shouldn't have done that at the end. So this is what the yam looks like, and I usually start off by just slicing it into 2-inch thick slices, I would say. So you have to put a bit of pressure on the knife just because the yams are pretty firm, a bit more firm than sweet potatoes, I would say. But yeah, cut them into 2-inch thick slices and do that for the entire tuber of yam, and then peel off the skin, because for this recipe you're not really going to use the skin for anything, and you just need to be careful so you don't slice off your finger. And there's other ways to peel yam, but this is just how I'm more comfortable peeling the yam. And so once I'm done peeling all of the slices of yam, then I rinse out the yam. I make sure to rinse it out really well, you know, just to get rid of any sand or any particles that might be on there, and I rinse it at least 2 times, maybe 3, and then put it back on the chopping board. And for this recipe I just cut it into quarters, so that gives me cubes that are about 2 by 2 inches thick. And you'd see that the yams are a bit tacky, I would say. That's how yams usually are. And then I put them into water. You need to put them in water so that they don't start to change color by being exposed to air. For the plantains, I start off just by cutting off the 2 ends of the plantain, and then making a slight incision on the sides of the plantain, and then using my finger I just pull off the skin of the plantain completely, and that's really very simple. And then just slice the plantain into 2-inch thick medallions, I would say, and that's it. Very simple, very straightforward, and this way you have your yams and plantain ready to cook.